Hello all, welcome to Legal Talks by Desi Kanun. I am Suyash and I am excited to have started this show. On today's show, we will talk about another judicial pronouncement by the Honorable Supreme Court of India in relation to management of COVID-19 pandemic. So let's cut the chase and move on to the topic at hand. The name of the case is In Re, the proper treatment of COVID-19 patients and dignified handling of dead bodies in the hospitals, etc. In this case, the court took cognizance of the situation prevalent across the country in relation to management of COVID-19 pandemic by the government and the various authorities, specifically in relation to fire safety and other issues. The court looked into the steps taken by all the authorities and took a holistic cognizance of the entire situation, and thereafter it passed certain directions in relation to fire safety as well as on other things as well. So let us discuss the directions in relation to fire safety that were given to the various states and union territories. The court directed that the states and the union territories should appoint one nodal officer for fire safety for each COVID hospital, and a committee is to be constituted to carry their fire audits at regular intervals for taking follow-up action. It is important to understand that in many COVID hospitals, fire has taken place and many people have died, many lives have been lost, a lot of chaos has occurred. Thus, the court was cognizant of this fact, and that is why it has asked for appointment of a specific nodal officer for fire safety. Further, the COVID hospitals are also to apply for obtaining a no objection certificate from the fire departments of the states, after which appropriate action is to be taken against the errant hospitals. In this regard, it is important to note that in any case, if a hospital is being set up, they have to obtain all the required permits, but the court understood that in case of COVID hospitals, there is a lot of pressure on its management, on the staff, on the health workers. Thus, this is a very cardinal requirement that fire safety must be given due regard in COVID hospitals, and thus all these steps are to be taken by the hospitals. Now, let us understand the role of the government and the authorities that has been specified by the court in this case. The court started by explaining that right to health is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution of India, and it includes right to affordable treatment. The court made clear that the state must make provisions for affordable treatment, and if required, there should be a cap on the fees charged by the private hospitals by exercising the powers under the Disaster Management Act 2005. In our last show as well, we discussed that the entire exercise in relation to COVID-19 pandemic is being done under the guise of the Disaster Management Act. Further, the court also made a very important observation. It gave a very important direction by saying that more and more police personnel shall be deployed at the places where there is likelihood of gathering by the people, such as food courts, eateries, vegetable markets, sabzi mandis, bus stations, railway stations, street vendors, etc. Thus, all the public places must follow stringent norms in relation to social distancing, and there must not be any large gathering in these places. And if there is a likelihood of large gathering, then police must take appropriate steps in this regard. Further, the court also admonished the practice of celebrations and gatherings in this time of pandemic and said that as far as possible, no permission is to be granted by the local administrations for such celebrations and gatherings even during the day hours, and where permission is granted, strict compliance of SOPs, that is the standard operating procedures, is to be ensured. There is another interesting observation by the court It said that there shall be more and more testing and to declare the correct facts and figures. This is extremely important. This shows that the court understands that the current level of testing that our country has in relation to COVID 19 is not sufficient and testing must increase. And further, the testing that has taken place now, or the figures in relation to COVID 19 that have been formulated till now, may not be as correct as they seem to be, and there is a clear need to declare correct facts and figures. Further, the court also directed the authorities to keep private hospitals' beds free, and if these hospital beds are not free, then action has to be taken against the errant hospitals. And for the sake of convenience of the people, helpline numbers in this regard must be set up. Next, the court also talked about curfew and said that curfew on weekends or night might be considered by states where it is not in place, as most of us must be knowing that night curfew is there in a lot of states, and the states who do not have it need to understand this observation of the court. And if the states are planning to impose night curfew, it must be announced long in advance to give time to people to make provisions. Further, passing orders on COVID 19 in relation to management of COVID 19, the court said that to cut the chain of transmission in areas where number of cases are on higher scale, sealing and lockdown should be done. Thus, the court is cognizant of the fact that there is a reasonable likelihood that cases might increase in some areas, and if cases increase, then those areas must be sealed or lockdown should be imposed so that the disease is not spread beyond those areas. The court also did not leave the political parties and observed that the political parties must follow the guidelines issued by the Election Commission of India from time to time in relation to COVID 19. These political parties must follow all the norms of social distancing, wearing masks, and other such steps that are required. Lastly, the court acknowledged that the doctors, nurses, and health workers are under tremendous pressure and they are already exhausted physically and mentally, and thus some mechanism may be required to give them intermittent rest. There were other general observations as well in relation to the COVID 19 pandemic. The court did not spare the people as well and very rightly observed that people too have their fundamental duties to be performed and they must follow the rules made by the governments very strictly, failing which they cannot be permitted to infringe the rights of other citizens who are following those guidelines and who are making an endeavor to keep other people safe. And people who do not follow these guidelines have a duty to respect the right to health of other citizens as well. The court also stated that due to unprecedented pandemic, everybody in the world is suffering one way or the other. It is a world war against COVID 19. Therefore, there shall be government public partnership to avoid world war against COVID 19. The court acknowledged that COVID 19 is not a nation specific disease, it is a world war that is going on right now, and all the countries are fighting tirelessly against this disease. And by saying that there shall be government public partnership, I think the court meant that the people and the governments they must work in synchrony as well as in harmony to make sure that our combined efforts are able to defeat this disease in the long run. It also acknowledged that it cannot be disputed that for whatever reasons the treatment has become costlier and costlier and it is not affordable to the common people at all. Even if one survives from COVID 19, many times financially and economically he is finished. These are big words by the court. The court understands that the treatment in relation to COVID 19 is so costly in some places that despite getting treatment, despite being cured of COVID-19, the financial and economic stability of people is severely compromised. Now, what are my concluding remarks? I think the order pronounced by the Honorable Supreme Court explains the profound and the dire state of affairs that is prevalent across the country, and I too acquiesce to the fact that people are confused, they desperately require guidance, and they need some rest, they need some respite, they need some form of help. And I think one of the most important observations in this order is in relation to the doctors, nurses, and the health workers. I too feel that there is a dire need to devise mechanisms to provide rest to the health workers, since they are the ones who are working at the forefront, and they have been working tirelessly since last 8 to 9 months, and they are truly exhausted. Some form of respite, some form of rest must be given to them, or some mechanism could be devised in this regard. Now, I wish to conclude by saying that these are tough times for everyone, and there is a need to show patience, faith, and courage in our common knowledge and wisdom. We have defeated such diseases earlier, and we are on the verge of defeating this disease as well. We just need to remain cautious, we just need to remain on guard for now. So, thank you for listening to our show. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked this stream. Please subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, iTunes, Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, Telegram, and Facebook. Thank you again. Stay tuned.